Hi, everyone. Well, I have chocolate in my arms, and it is turning into almost like a game. You know how when you want people to do something and then they resist? Well, the kitties know that when the lights come on Wednesday night, that they either are going to want to be here, or Fluffy always makes it into a game and runs downstairs. He's adorable. He will be back. He loves to play around. But Chocolate seems to kind of like being able to be here in the lights. And so tonight, for those of you who have written me about, oh, I love seeing your kitties, we're always trying to have both. But Fluffy is a clown. He really is. He has a tremendous sense of game, and that's what he does. He knows what these lights mean. So that's why he's not here. So I'm going to put beautiful, thick-haired, huge, seems like he keeps getting bigger all the time, Chocolate down, and they will both run around. And as many of you have said to me, that some of you even bet on whose tail is going to come up in the camera. So who knows tonight. But I have a lot of really interesting news. And I'm starting with 2 bursts of energy reported this day of November 20th, 2019. And both energy bursts are so strong that even scientists are puzzled. One is on Earth and one is way out in space. First, here's the extraordinary cosmic outburst, 5 billion light years from Earth. It's in the middle of a bright galaxy that astronomers call GRB 190114c. The GRB stands for gamma ray burst. NASA's Hubble, Swift, and Fermi telescopes earlier this year caught light from there that is, quote, the highest energy ever observed in this universe, close quote. The measurement is 1 tera electron volt, or TeV. That is equal to 1 trillion volts. This is 1 trillion times as much energy per photon as visible light. The Hubble Space Telescope website explains that, quote, to achieve this energy, material must be emitted from a collapsing star at 99.999% the speed of light, and that is forced through the gas around the star at the speed of light that creates the gamma ray burst itself. Now, this intense gamma ray burst, discovered in January this year, is a breakthrough for physicists who are trying to understand how does matter behave when it is moving 99.999% of the speed of light. And back on Earth yesterday afternoon at 2:20 p.m. local time in Birmingham, England, workers and passengers in the Colmore Business District all reported to police and media that they heard a loud bang which shook buildings. One Twitter posting said, the roof shook. Another said, I work near Snow Hill and it sounded like a bomb going off in the distance, and it alerted the whole office. Birmingham is the second most prominent UK city after London and has a population of some 1.2 million. Its largest daily newspaper, the Birmingham Mail, headlined, riddle of bang in Birmingham intensifies as British Geological Survey issues statement. Both the British Geological Survey and West Midlands Police report that to date that they have not identified the cause of the mystery bang. Adding to the mystery, the Geological Survey spokesperson said, quote, to confirm, we have checked our nearest seismic stations, and there are no seismic signals recorded for Birmingham this afternoon, meaning yesterday on November 19th. Now today, I was able to call the Geological Survey's press office in London, and I was given a confirmation that no seismic data at the survey was recorded in Birmingham, even though so many people there were reporting building shaking. In fact, the press officer told me that if it had been an earthquake that could produce the widespread shaking of buildings and roofs, as so many people reported, it would have been a sizable earthquake. It is the absence of any seismic data that is so puzzling, exactly as it has been in so many other worldwide reports of loud booms, metallic scrapings, trumpet sounds, and loud jet engine noises that I've been reporting about recently. And this is where houses and buildings have shaken, and even sidewalks and house foundations have cracked. But no seismic data in those cases either. What does all this mean? After a decade, from 2011 to 2019, of booming, banging, scraping, loud phenomena without any official explanation from authorities in any part of our world. And all of this, for me, goes to the increasingly profound question that I have been asking for years, but now seems even more relevant. How much of the alien presence interacting with Earth is in the air, on land, and underwater, but completely invisible to all of us humans? And that is a question that I personally think we all need to learn a great deal more about, because I think that we have been working with invisible technologies on this planet for centuries that have been operated by other intelligences. And relevant to that question, this week I received through encrypted ProtonMail an anonymous communication from someone calling themselves the messenger. The messenger sent a large, high-resolution photograph that I'm going to leave on the screen while I read the encrypted ProtonMail. Quote, Linda, I'm writing to you to make you aware of some very interesting things going on in Colorado. I've attached a photo of a group of jets on Friday, November 8th, 2019 at 10:30 a.m. on the western slope south of Grand Junction, Colorado. We were working in the office when we heard a tremendous and thunderous sound that came abruptly without warning. We walked outside and looked up in the sky and saw this squadron of jets. I snapped this photo. There were 6 escort jets in an attack pattern. One is out of frame and one is near the large plane's wing. They are escorting this massive transport jet, which is the 6th plane in the pattern. It is all white in color at approximately 600 feet at altitude, moving very slowly. The 5 fighters look like white A-10 Warthogs, but modified. As you probably know, A-10s are not used for air escort. They are air-to-land attack jets. The large transport jet, along with the fighters in this photograph, have yet to be identified by our aviation experts, implying that he's a professional dealing with air technology, perhaps for an intelligence agency. And that as these all appear, he says, to be modified in shape to a degree for some purpose. Also, one of our group pointed out that even Air Force One has only 2 F-22 Raptors as escorts, not 5 escorts. So what in the world is this huge plane? He said, I went back in the office to grab a powerful spotting scope. Within 30 seconds, the 6 jets had visibly and audibly disappeared, without a trace, within 180 degrees. We had nearly a 200-mile unobstructed view across from the northwest and south, but all 6 of the planes had vanished. We listened carefully. No sound signature from 6 very loud jets moving slowly, and they didn't show up on radar with online radar maps. Lastly, Over the last few months, we have been witnessing a multitude of C-17 jets, 2 at a time, circling the small towns from Grand Junction down to 96 miles southeast to Ouray in Colorado, at altitudes as low as 200 feet, just above tree line. They circle the towns for around a half hour and then leave. Most of the time, they just vanish from sight. They mostly come from the north or east, and they leave the same way. The messenger continues, quote, "The DOE, the Department of Energy, and other various agencies have also cruised this region at very low altitudes, hovering around the mountain and hilltops, also following the canyons, perhaps searching for something, possibly looking for ancient structures and meridian lines which have been potentially identified here through research and exploration in the region. We also hear the low vibration hum at all times, day or night, especially when there is no land or air traffic." Linda, I have seen your videos on YouTube and Earthfiles.com. The booms are also present here in Colorado. Signed, The Messenger, close quote. If any of you listening tonight know anything about this mysterious and persistent aerial activity in Colorado, please email me at earthfiles@earthfiles.com. That is a way to set up a more encrypted pattern of communication. You can also use the U.S. mail to my post office box 21843, Albuquerque, New Mexico 87154, or you can get the app. It's encrypted for ProtonMail. I use that with several people successfully. And then there's always FedEx, but we have to establish communication in order to use that. And then there is another high strangeness. It is the sound, the high pitch, sort of eerie scream that people have reported and even recorded of what seemed to be the huge Sasquatch Bigfoot creatures since at least the 1970s and up to the present day. Like this recent headline on November 15th by the CBC radio in Canada. Is a Sasquatch loose in Ontario? Historically, northwestern Ontario is known for Sasquatch reports. It was last month, in October 2019. Hunter Gino Mikas had a high strangeness experience with his wife and grandson. They live in Sioux Lookout, about 240 miles northwest of Thunder Bay on Lake Superior. Gino likes to hunt, and the family was walking in a remote forest several miles from home. From some trees beyond them came a chorus of eerie, high-pitched sounds that Mikas recorded on his cell phone. And here now are a few scenes of that edited audio. Now I'm going to compare that Ontario, Canada sound to a 1978 audio tape that was recorded by a woman in Snohomish, Washington, 37 miles northeast of Seattle. Snohomish is close to Everett and Whidbey Island, both known for loud, unexplained sounds, UFO sightings, and animal mutilations. She watched 3 8 to 10 feet tall, black and silver long-haired humanoid Sasquatch standing in the trees about 200 feet from her back porch, making high-pitched calls. She had an old, scratchy cassette tape recorder, but captured several minutes of the Sasquatch sounds as she's watching them. And I've edited down for comparison to the Sioux Lookout October 2019 high-pitched vocalizations. So we're talking about 41 years, and we're going back in time 41 years now to the sounds in Snohomish. I had that same audio tape that you just heard of the Sasquatch calls from 1978 with me in 2001 when I was on location reporting for a Discovery Channel series entitled Modern Mysteries of Asia. The TV crew and I flew to Hanoi, Vietnam, and on to Vientiane, Laos. And then we traveled in a Russian open-back truck on war-torn Route 9 to the Laos and Vietnam border, and to a remote village called Villa Buri in Laos. There, in that summer of 2001, local families had reported seeing very tall, wild forest men and females with human faces and large hairy bodies. Locals who put together this to put out in the restaurants in the village about this tall creature. They said they had watched one of the tall wild men eat from a tree branch that measured 14 feet off the ground. So I played that Snohomish, Washington 1978 tape for the natives in Villa Buri on the Laos and Vietnam border where the tall wild man was seen. Everyone listening to the tape nodded yes. It was the sound wild men made on the nearby mountain. And what I want to share with you now is what happened the night that we were there after we had played the audio tape for the village. We're talking about a place where all of the little houses were made out of bamboo, where we, the crew, that included political representatives from Laos, producer Denise Blazik from Australia, who has become a great friend. She's wonderful. Others who were from the Bang production out of Hong Kong. There was like about maybe 10 or 12 of us in the camera crew. And the only place that we could stay was a large two-story, all cement, never finished, just floors and some windows. And they brought in some cots and some mosquito netting, and this whole group of us, about a dozen people, we were just spread out over the floor. And it was the second floor that we went to, I think because there was more space. So we're on the second floor of a completely unfinished, all cement building. And I had my tape recorder that had the audio tape from 1978 Snohomish that you just heard, and a bag that had notebooks and pens and a camera. And the way we had all spread out for that night was that people were just kind of haphazardly, we were all in the same floor, but people were kind of around, so there were bags in between people either lying on sleeping bags or a few cots. They had put me on a cot inside of a mosquito netting. There's no light, there's no electricity, and out of a completely sound sleep, I came sitting straight up, solid darkness, Not a single other person is awake. The floor is just dark shadows. And I am hearing, as clearly as you just heard on that tape, that high-pitched, soaring voice going on. I wanted everybody to hear it. I wanted to grab my tape recorder and see if I could record yet another. But I knew that my tape recorder and the bag were about 10 or 12 feet from me. And if I started moving, everybody would start waking up. What is happening? And I made a choice because I figured nobody would hear it, because it takes a long time for people to get, when they come out of sleep, a sense of what's happening. So in the dark, on that second floor of that unfinished cement building that had been made for a government project and never finished, I just sat inside of that mosquito netting in the blackness, listening to that high-pitched voice. Went on probably for 2 to 3 minutes. And it lives inside of my mind and my soul. Whatever these wild men in Laos and Vietnam and the Himalayas, and the Bigfoot in Texas and Florida and so many other states, Sasquatch up in Snohomish and the Northwest into Canada. Whatever they are, I am personally convinced from having talked with people who have been in police, who have been in forensics, that there are so many differences that they have found where they've had tracks. And one of the most interesting is that even though it's controversial, I've seen a lot of photos where the big, huge 17 to 19 inch Sasquatch foot, where there are prints where the toes are, there will be vertical, what we would call fingerprints. They're vertical and straight, where ours are swirled and curved. It's one of the things that people have noticed in differences. And that for those of you who are interested in the whole Sasquatch, Bigfoot, what are they? Are they extraterrestrial? Are they manipulated by extraterrestrial biological entities? Have they been made on our planet just as we, Homo sapiens sapien, are at the end of a line of many, many genetic manipulations of already evolving primates to create us? Is this a line of creation of genetic manipulation from the Earth for reasons that are not clear, but that they are a life form that lives underground and seems to have the knowledge that they must be secret from Homo sapiens sapien? And everybody who has tracked them, been around them, have been impressed by their intelligence and the fact that they seem sometimes to be telepathic. Some people have felt like they have gotten telepathic communication in the presence of, let's say, they know that there are Sasquatch that are throwing rocks at them. This has happened in several places. And in the process of rocks being thrown at a campfire where people, humans are, that one or more humans at the campfire will get this impression: go away, we don't want you here. I find the Sasquatch, Bigfoot to be fascinating, and that I want you to know at the end of this live stream at 8:30 Mountain Time and in all other time zones, we're going to make available in as simple a way as possible. There will be URLs that will be posted at my Earthfiles headlines page. One of the URLs will take you to the 4-part Laos, Vietnam, the trip that I had that was so fascinating in 2001, to the DMZ zone, where the villagers had been seeing the tall, hairy wild men reaching up to 14-foot branches. And there's a 4-part on that. I think you would find it fascinating. And then there will be another URL that will go to a forensic expert says that this is a different species, and the unidentified primate body print and hairs discovered in Washington State, and Sasquatch Bigfoot having to do with evidence in North America. And so those are Earthfiles that I have done in the past, and they're as relevant today as they were then. And that I'm going to try from now on going forward, that as I do the subjects on Wednesday nights, if I have done Earthfiles that I think are relevant, we will keep trying to make it simple so that all you have to do is click on one URL and go to 2, 3, 4 different reports. And I would love to know from those of you who are listening tonight, have you ever heard any of these sounds in the woods where you were traveling? Have you ever encountered anything that is like a big, huge 8 to 10 to 12 foot tall, sort of primate looking anywhere, or know anybody in your family or friends who may have? I think it's fascinating to share some of the human interactions with these large primates, which, to finish out the high strangeness of them. This is not the only report, but this exists, and I have seen it was an offense report in the Cascade County Sheriff's Office in Great Falls, Montana, going all the way back to when I began the animal mutilation research, in which Sasquatch Bigfoot are seen in so many of the ranches in the areas where there are animal mutilations. I know law enforcement thinks that they are somehow involved, and they may be. And here was one of the offense reports in the Cascade County Sheriff's Office in Montana, where they had had a couple of hundred animal mutilation reports in the early 70s. This was a 1976 report. It was a rancher who filed and wrote down what happened. He was out hunting, had a .30-06 rifle, came around a bend. There standing, the way it was described, was at least an 8 foot tall, hairy, reddish brown Bigfoot or Sasquatch. And without stopping, he brought up his rifle and shot. And this big creature just disappeared in a flash of light. And in the sheriff's offense report, disappeared in a flash of light was underlined. I had a discussion with Keith Wolverton, the deputy in the Great Falls Sheriff's Office, and we were both saying to each other, how could that big 8 to 10 foot tall Sasquatch Bigfoot creature that would seem so three-dimensional and physical in this matter world be strictly organic matter if it can disappear in a flash of light? And it's not the only thing that has disappeared in a flash of light on this planet. Are they holographic? Is there something about an advanced intelligence that knows how to use three-dimensional holograms to upload and download information from this planet, and they can look like Sasquatch or humans or trees or telephone poles or oil barrels? They can look like anything until there's an interaction with humans, and then they disappear in a flash of light, or they move up vertically into the sky and disappear. It is one of the most fascinating parts in terms of mystery of the UFO phenomena, because this has been reported, this type of disappearance in light, or objects that we would think were on the ground and rise into the sky and disappear. This is a long time kind of, I would say, really important feature of the UFO UAP phenomena, because it's so prevalent. It has been seen around the world and is probably a key to why the advanced intelligences interact with the surface of this planet at all, having to do with information, having to do with gathering something that serves the other intelligences, meanwhile leaving us with that question. What are we dealing with that can disappear in a flash of light? If it does so, is it technology that the Sasquatch carry? Or is it because the Sasquatch are hooked into some other intelligence that knows when a bullet has headed their way? These are fascinating mysteries. And Peggy, I would love now to go to our wonderful audience and see what questions there are tonight.
I'd like to thank some viewers for their super chats. So Exodasha, Talia, Kala, Vicky, and Nunavire, thank you for your super chat.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, you guys.
And in keeping with tonight's topic, someone asked, have you ever heard about a Bigfoot being violent or attacking a person?
It is mixed. And yet it seems to me that in talking to the scientists who have studied a lot, who have even tracked some Sasquatch, they get the general impression that the Sasquatch will do anything to stay out of human life. That we are somehow treated as if the Sasquatch knows that they must hide, that they must live underground somehow. But I am thinking of one particular case in which I interviewed people who went into the forest, and I think it was the Snohomish area, Northwest. And there were, I believe, it was like a family with friends, like half a dozen people, and they were at a campfire. And they're sitting in fold-out chairs, and they're talking, and it was after dinner. It was getting sort of late. And all of a sudden, from the tree line, they had their sleeping bags in their tent, not in the trees, but sort of outside and at the edge where the trees were like maybe 100 feet away. And I remember the man telling me the story. He raised up his arms and he said, a boulder like this big came flying toward the campfire from the forest, didn't hit them, seemed to be deliberately, is the way he said it, aimed off, but it was huge. And the men who were sitting there thinking that they were strong, this man telling me the story said, there's no way I could have picked that boulder up and heaved it from the trees and hit where we were around the campfire. And he said they got up and they're now looking toward the forest, and here comes another, and that these were big. These were not little rocks in hands. These were boulders that were being thrown. And he said half a dozen coming out at the length and the strength that it would take to throw these boulders. He said they just all discussed and said, no way are we going to stay here tonight. They packed up and they left. And as he said, laughing, ironically, he said, if that's Sasquatch, they got what they wanted, because it was really clear they did not want us there. And I'm sure that some of you may have had friends, or it seems like most people have had something around the idea that they've been camping in deep forests and rocks have been thrown at them, whether or not they've seen the thrower, but it's associated with Sasquatch and Bigfoot. But I don't put that into the category of violence. I put that into the category of communication. That the Sasquatch and the Bigfoot throwing those boulders are basically saying, look, we're strong, we don't want you here, go away. But they didn't throw them right at the camp. And the man telling me that story said obviously they could have. And that might even, a boulder hitting us may have killed us. And they didn't do anything like that. I also remember interviewing a scientist. This is at least 10, 12 years, maybe 15 years ago, but I remember this vividly. It was also up in the Northwest, and he had started out tracking what looked like a pair of, like if you had large feet and they were making periodic tracks. There was one set and then a slightly smaller set and then a small set, so 3. And he said he was tracking these, and then he heard noise. And it was like a mountainside where there were a bunch of, like shale would come down in stones. And he stood, he said, I froze listening to the sound, the clicking sound of the rocks. And he could see higher how the rocks were coming down on this face. And he decided that he would try to creep up. And he got to like where the land came up like this, and then it went down into like a shallow draw, and then it came back up like this and like that, and then the mountain with all of the rocks. And he said, I got up to here, and there was a large Sasquatch that he considered male, a slightly smaller female, and what he said he thought was a child. And they were going along on this other edge of the draw area. And then he said, I just froze. I didn't know whether they were going to run from me or run to me or what was going to happen. He said, I just froze and watched. And he said, if they were aware of me, they did not make any signs. And for about 10 minutes, he said, totally frozen, unmoving. I didn't even want to breathe. I watched as the larger Sasquatch, taking its hand, not a tool, dug down as if it knew what it was going after, and ended up pulling up something. The scientist said, I do not know what it was, but that they began to share something that had been dug, and they were eating it. And he said, so they were able clearly to harvest somewhere, dig down, come back, sort of like squirrels would do, but this was Sasquatch Bigfoot, and get food. And then he said, after they had been sharing the food, it was almost as if, okay, we know this human is there watching us. They just hurried off. But he said, when you watch something like that, he said, you can't help being a human, watching another family of what we would call Sasquatch or Bigfoot, and not feel an empathy, not feel a kind of cousinship. We don't have hair all over our body, but we're primate, and the people who have interacted, not many, but a few I've talked to, and have gotten what they thought were telepathic thought words from something like a Sasquatch, that it seems as if we were both made to be workers on this planet by something else, we may have some genetic connection. And what would happen if instead of trying to track down the Sasquatch and people trying to kill them for money or to put on a wall, that we had communication as humans to Sasquatch? We will have laws, and nobody can attack you and you don't attack us. Would it be possible eventually to live on Earth with the Sasquatch out in the open, so to speak, as another life form that somebody else in the universe set in motion for reasons that are not clear. I will be interested in what you all may have in insights about all of this, and go forward to another question.
This is a different topic completely, but somebody was wondering about the bismuth magnesium, and they were saying that some people have been trying to say that it's slag or residue from specialty metal refining.
Only people in ignorance could say that. 22 years, I am the one person on the planet who has had the bismuth, magnesium, zinc, layered metal, various pieces, and filled notebooks full, archives of all of the scientists and people who have had like an agreement with me. This is how I've handled it since 1996 to 2019. That Art Bell and I, doing Coast to Coast and Dreamland Radio, a Army sergeant who actually came from Virginia, but told us publicly at the time to protect himself that he was from South Carolina. And that he started out by sending us a letter. It came on April 10th, 1996, typed, and it came with a box that had pieces in it that turned out to be 99.5% pure aluminum. And I learned that from getting some of it to Alcoa Aluminum and getting a phone report from them that it was 99.5% aluminum. And they asked where it came from because they didn't produce for the commercial market anything that was 99.5% aluminum. So that was the first unusual feedback on that. And then we received another letter talking about how this came from the writer's grandfather, who had died in 1974 and had left a legacy of 2 boxes of metals and a diary, handwritten diary, about his working in the U.S. Army back in the 40s, and that these metal pieces had been collected from a wedge-shaped craft that came down between Sierra Blanca and the San Mateo Mountains. Look at it on a map. You can look at all this at Earthfiles. I have a 7-part series right now that is easily accessible on one of those pages. Go and read everything for yourself. And between Sierra Blanca and San Mateo is White Sands. It was called Proving Ground in the late 40s. Today it's known as Missile Range. And that when we got the 3rd letter about all of this, it came with another shipment that was the bismuth, magnesium, zinc. Now, I had help with a professor at the University of Michigan who had access to some of the best labs in the world there. And when we got the second shipment of this very strange looking metal that was clearly layered, silver and looking like almost like snow, sparkling on one side, and pure black on the bottom. And the upshot is that after a couple of months of varying tests that included energy dispersive spectroscopy, wave dispersive spectroscopy, electron microscope set at an energy dispersive EDS category, that we learned that the black layer was 1 to 4 microns of bismuth. A human blood cell, think of your blood, 1 cell, is 8 microns on average. So the bismuth is half the diameter of a human blood cell. That thin bismuth has a layer of 100 to 200 microns of magnesium zinc alloy. The magnesium zinc alloy is 97.6% magnesium that has 11% more magnesium 26 in it than normal earth magnesium, mixed with 2.4% zinc. There is no bonding agent. This has been proved at the University of Michigan. This has been proved in the visit I went to the Carnegie Institute in Washington, D.C., and worked with an ion microprobe technician in which we were able to be at the atomic and molecular level. One of the first things he established is there's no bonding agent of any kind. It goes 1 to 4 microns pure bismuth to the 100 to 200 microns of the magnesium zinc alloy. Your hair, an average hair, you take an average hair, one single hair, is about 100 microns. So the 100 to 200 micron layer of the magnesium zinc is about the thickness of a human hair, and it alternates 1 to 4 microns pure bismuth with 100 to 200 microns of the magnesium zinc, bismuth, magnesium zinc, bismuth, magnesium zinc, for 26 to 30 layers in those pieces. And over time, because we're talking 22 years, I have sent this out. Jacques Vallée had it in 2017 doing tests. Paul Chu, this superconductor genius down in Houston, he had it for a period of time in 1996. Howe Puthoff had it a half a dozen times before. It has one of the pieces that I've had has gone to them to the stars to work with the Army. And why? The whole goal right now, based on Howe Puthoff, the physicist's work, other things that have been told to me by a physicist, giving insights about what this might be able to do, it boils down to that if the physicist is right, if Howe Puthoff's calculations are right, that the pure bismuth, that half of blood cell diameter, could be a wave guide for terahertz frequencies so high, so short, that they are pushing against the speed of light. Look on an electromagnetic fan, and you'll see this. And because the whole reason that terahertz frequencies are so special is they are so short. And if you get up to where Howe Puthoff, the physicist, has calculated, if over 5,000 of terahertz could be aimed or somehow generated as a field around the bismuth, magnesium, zinc, it could turn into a lifting body, the holy grail of neutralizing gravity. So 22 years, I've been exposed to the concept that the bismuth, magnesium, zinc layered metal was known at Area 51 S4 as a nanotechnology. That's what it is. Meta, by the way, metamaterials. It's just a word for nanotechnology, working at the atomic and molecular level. That's what nanotechnology is. That word metamaterials, it's one and the same, nanotechnology, working at the atomic and molecular level. And if they were able to achieve, which Jacques Vallée and the people he was working with in 2017, they were not able to build this generator. Howe Puthoff wanted to do this work in 2012, and it's now 2019, 2012 to 2019 for 7 years. He's not been able to get that generator built. If the Army can build it, maybe the United States will be the first to neutralize gravity because of these pieces left to us, working on the radio, from a grandson of a grandfather who had served in the Army at the end of the 40s and was in a security team that ringed a wedge-shaped craft. And the diary, assuming that the diary is literal in the grandfather's hand, says that the grandfather was watching as light was emitting from the bottom of the wedge-shaped craft for 3 hours. I believe it's italicized or underlined in the original letter. You can see all the original letters in my Earthfiles.com 7-part series. All full, complete 7 or 5 typed letters are there. Another really important thing, in the typed letters, I was the one person who got to talk with the Army sergeant. He called, wanted to talk with the researcher working on what he had sent. And I learned from him that his grandfather said that the grandfather, watching where the light had been, took his hand. This is what he told me on the phone. In the letters, it said appropriated the pieces in the second shipment where it had glowed with light. What he told me on the phone is, from his grandfather, maybe some of the security team went to the bathroom. Who knows? Maybe he felt he was alone, walked over, reached under where he could, grabbed a hold of what was there, pulled, and it broke off in his hand. And they are brittle. They're very brittle pieces. And that those pieces may have some technological relationship to a craft that was like a self-activating software, that whatever activated the wedge-shaped craft was interacting mind to the craft, and that this material was used to neutralize gravity. That seems to be the story. So for any of you who have heard anything about saying that this is from electroplating or vacuum vapor deposition, no, never has been. That's counter intel. So go to Earthfiles, read everything that is there in the 7-part Earthfiles about the bismuth, magnesium, zinc, and you will see how extraordinary this is. I hope that one of the scientists that have been so challenged because nobody has been able to do positive testing of their hypothesis with this material yet. And this is another very important thing to leave you. 22 years, not a single person, lab, company, no one has been able to duplicate, recreate, manufacture, produce the layered pure bismuth and magnesium zinc alloy, alternating like a torte cake from half the size of a human blood cell for the bismuth and size of a human hair for the magnesium zinc. It's amazing, extraordinary. So let's see, is there time for another?
Hi, Linda. I have one question about Sasquatch.
Yeah.
Do you think there could be a connection between the Sasquatch and then Anunnaki?
Wow, that is a really interesting question. I know that in a book, I wonder, I'm just going to try this because I know it's in here. This is an excellent book. I had this a long time ago after I got back from Vietnam and Laos. This is l'homme de Neanderthal est toujours vivant. That means that the Neanderthal man or humanoid is always alive. And this was a book this version was published in 1974. The author is Bernard Uvelman with Boris Porchnev. This book is superb. It has a huge photographic section in it. Some of the photographs are of the huge, what they would call in the Himalayas, Yeti instead of Sasquatch or Bigfoot or wild men. They would call it Yeti. There are all these names for what essentially seems to be the same type of species. And in one of the areas, and I think I can, Brad, can I hold this up? Because I was looking at this today. It is, I wonder, can you put that right close to the lens? Just can you do it here?
Look at the left of it.
Okay, great. Let's see. It is this where my ring is. Do you see that hairy creature with its arm up? Can you see that right there? This creature, I put my index finger, it is holding that disc, and it's drawn with hair around its body, and Heuvelman is convinced that these go back to Samaria, and that the winged disc up here, I'll try to connect this together. We're doing this on the fly, but sometimes, okay, back. Here's what Heuvelman thought was the Sasquatch. See over here? Think of the winged disc, Samaria, Egypt, Göbekli Tepe. The winged disc was all over in Göbekli Tepe, and it's 12,000 years old. I mean, I'm there now in the red, right? The red rectangle. So, Heuvelman was also going back into ancient, some of them are stones, some of them are carved in metal, and here is what he thought was the Sasquatch, and there is the winged disc. And I'd never seen these until I started going through this amazing book. L'homme du Néandertal est toujours vivant. And that book, more than anything I've ever seen, raises this whole issue of the historic connection that has a timeline link back to, if we say Samaria, and the Sumerian work is 5,000 years old, Göbekli Tepe, we know, was carbon dated to 12,000 years ago. Is the Anunnaki a real extraterrestrial, full-blood, non-human civilization from someplace else that got here before 12,000 years ago? And Spartan 1, in my Antarctica work, said that he had met and talked with an Egyptian archaeologist who said that the truth was that they already had hard proof, not hypothesis, hard proof, that the Sphinx that is in the Giza Plateau in Cairo is more than 35,000 years old. And I found this so interesting from Spartan 1, the Navy SEAL, because before he died, John Anthony West, a longtime friend of mine, we were at contact in the desert. I think it was 3 years before he passed. And he told me that he and Robert Schoch had been doing more analysis on the Sphinx in that area. And this was what John said to me at contact. He said, Linda, I am personally convinced now that the Sphinx is at least 40,000 years old, and gave me the reasons why. Well, that's closer to what the Spartan 1 Navy SEAL is saying than what has been, quote unquote, accepted academic dating of 5,000 years. The people now, and John Anthony West and Robert Schoch. Robert Schoch is a Yale University PhD in geology. I think that we're getting ready for all kinds of a revolution academically, a revolution in all sorts of ways, and that a big part of the revolution has to be that we're going to have to begin to realize and recognize that we've been sold a bill of goods by a lot of power brokers for reasons that are not clear. And that the truth is, I personally, this is a personal opinion, I think that the dating of the Sphinx back to 35,000 to 40,000 years, and that it would be Anunnaki coming from someplace else, makes sense. But it's not the bottom line answer to 2 million years ago, the standing up of Homo erectus, and that briefing paper that I was shown at Kirtland here in Albuquerque back in April 9, 1983. And it said extraterrestrial biological entities manipulated DNA in already evolving primates to create Homo sapien 2 million years ago. Well, who was here between 2 million years ago and 40,000 years ago? And then, to close out tonight on something I've talked about before, but it's important to keep repeating because we get a lot of new people, that December 1999 7-hour discussion that I had with that man who was a DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency analyst, who sought me out because he wanted to talk with me about what was called the resurrection technology in my third book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, High Strangeness. The government knew that we're dealing with extraterrestrial technology that can clone you, me, anything, literally anything, and keep life going. And he is the whistleblower who was retiring. He was retiring, leaving the DIA. That's apparently why he sought me out at that time. But he told me at the very beginning of that discussion that went on for 7 hours, Linda, our government has proof that 3 competing, in conflict, extraterrestrial civilizations have been manipulating DNA on this planet and terraforming this Earth for at least 270 million years. So the question isn't who was here 2 million years ago up to now, or to 5,000 years ago, or 40,000 years ago. It's who was here 270 million years ago, before the time of the dinosaurs. And he is the DIA analyst who told me that our government also has proof from communication with the Ebens that the dinosaurs were an 85 million year long experiment of theirs using Earth like a laboratory. I am not personally scared of, I don't want to run away from. There's nothing about trying to study and learn the facts about a completely different history of this planet and us humans than what we have been taught by power brokers who obviously have had self-serving interests in guiding us and denying us having this other knowledge. I find it exciting to start looking at our planet for what it really is, somebody else's perceived laboratory, but that now we, humans, Homo sapiens sapien, we have evolved to a point that maybe the whole next chapter of this amazing, incredible drama in this solar system is that we're finally going to meet, I hope in a peaceful handshake, those that know that they made us, and that they are in awe of the souls that something in the divine field inserted in this laboratory experiment of standing up primates on this planet. That we are so much more than what we've been taught, and that the universe is beginning to unfold in front of our eyes of the physicists, of being so strange and so much stranger than anything we ever could have guessed. And that we are moving toward perhaps another chapter there, where if we learn that it is a holographic universe, who made this universe? And was the whole test to see how does life come together and evolve organically versus an entire other cosmos that is completely artificial intelligence. Oh, I would love to know all of the answers to all of that. So next week, I'll be back here to get into whatever is breaking news and to hear more of your wonderful questions, and hope that you will tell everyone you know to please come and subscribe to the Earthfiles.com YouTube channel, where we can talk about anything that you want to bring up. See you next week.